Welcome to Sacred Spaces Advanced School of Ancestral Communication. I am Queen Carlenia Springer, author of Soul Marked for Life, Nana Ajua's daughter, and I am the founder of Project Home. And we are answering an ancestral call to reconnect our family, Afro-Rakitnit and Afro-Rakani, with our African Black family, with their ancestral heritage, to restore our divine connection and to organically reclaim our birthright. You see, when we operate in alignment with who we are, there is nothing that can stop us. Those that are our open enemies will come handing us things, asking us to please stop. Please stop what? They can't operate in righteousness. They are repelled by righteousness. I think of Frederick Douglass, who said, he said something to the effect that power concedes nothing without a demand. And we haven't been placing a demand because we haven't known how to place a demand. The way we worship is the way they taught us to worship. They are not our parents, but they have functioned in the stead of our parents while we disrespect our greatest mother and father, not knowingly, not knowingly, but out of ignorance. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. It will bind you up with pain and abuse based on what you're thinking, feeling, speaking. It responds with an automatic ringing. It will ring, listen, as clear as a bell, and you will find yourself in what you call hell. Heaven and hell are in the power of the tongue. You decide every moment whether you have lost or you have won. So let's talk about the power of the tongue, because I had an experience this morning where I called a friend and the conversation just began to flow. And I realized, I said to her, the things I was saying to her was confirming things that she had already experienced. And I realized in her telling me that, I told her, I said, listen, I'm the founder of Sacred Spaces Advanced School of Ancestral Communication. And so every day, and even moments throughout the day, I am becoming more and more aware of levels of communication that before I would have described as my own thoughts. And I also said, if you did not confirm what I was just saying, although I knew this was not something that was pre planned, I know that what I'm saying is speaking directly to your situation. If you did not confirm it, I would not have known that. But just before I got on the phone with you, I was reminded of being told some years ago, do not doubt what you know. I'm saying that to those of you who have an ear to hear, because even though we were not raised within our sacred community according to ancestral protocol, we still carry that divine DNA. Which, how many of y'all understand what I'm saying? We still carry that divine DNA. The example I gave my friend was, and she really did not grow up with her mother and father. She grew up with her grandparents, and I believe she left there when she was about 17 or 18. And because she didn't grow up with her parents, she really did not know them like that. But I said, for people who actually have known your dad or knew your mother or even your grandparents, meeting you for the first time, there would be things about you, even though you grew up in a completely different environment. There would be things about you, and they would say, she does that just like her father, or she does that. That's exactly what her mother would do, or that's exactly what her grandmother would say, or that's how her grandfather, that's how he moved. And you, the individual, know nothing. Why? Because we carry the essence of our family, and our greatest ancestor and ancestress is mother and father God, the great supreme being, who we say there's one God. Yes, but they're two sides of one coin. One could not exist without the other. We have electricity and magnetism. And when you think about it, and I was giving her this example, I said, those are two sides of the same spectrum. Electricity is expansive, magnetism is contractive. When you think about men and women and how our body is created, Our sexual organs, men, it's outside, right? It's expansive. Women, the womb, it's inside, and it's magnetic. So contractive is the word I'm looking for. So you can't have magnetism without electricity, and you can't have electricity without magnetism, because that electrical current is being attracted to some place, because at its root are atoms, which are either positive or negative. They're going through a state of being positive or negative, and it's either attracting something or it's repelling something, right? It's attracting or it's repelling. And so when we think about our conversations and the things we're saying, I was telling her, I said, if you did not confirm to me, like in the moment, that what I was saying to you was relevant, how would I have known? I would not know. And I said, this is how this system of white supremacy slash racism, as Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, our ancestress, who was a psychiatrist here in Washington, D.C., and spent her whole life studying this subject. She, you know, I lost my train of thought, but give me 1 second. What do you want me to convey? Yes, thank you. I said, what do you want me to convey? And what I got was that even that silence, even me saying I lost my train of thought, and taking the time to wait and not feel that uncomfortable space with mindless chatter, that means that I'm attuning myself to the level of conversation that is seeking to come through. So even you seeing that wasn't happenstance, because in the midst of that, I had the inclination to turn this off and say, oh, no, I'm going to start again. I'm not going to start again, because we're talking about communication. And so there are times we think we lose our train of thought, but what's coming through is that no, there's something else that's actually seeking to come through. And if we stay still in that moment, it will, the information will come through. And so what I was saying was that with my friend, I was saying to her that this system of, thank you, what white supremacy slash racism that Dr. Welsing studied and talked about operates literally by ignoring our people. So when you ignore someone, they don't have confirmation that the things that they're saying is relevant. Doubt begins to set in. And when you have already programmed them with the idea that they are inferior, um, and that they haven't come from nothing, and something is wrong with the color of their skin, something is inherently wrong with them. God doesn't even look like them. The way they worship is evil. Their roots are evil, and they need to clean themselves, because their bodies and they're like filthy rags in the sight of God. Um, when you operate in that manner, it causes doubt, and where we have doubt, there's a whole nother conversation going on. I told you, in the midst of that silence, I had the inclination to turn this off and to start it again. And I said no. And I'll tell you why I said no. Because even when I go out into nature, I said that's my shrine. That's my altar. When I go out there and I'm listening and I'm speaking, I will begin to teach. And in 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 practicing, I would say practicing that way, but actually a real conversation is happening in real time. I've had that experience where I am literally acting as if the place is full of people, and I'm teaching, and I come to a moment just like there where it seems like I lose my train of thought, and I stay right there. And then the next thought comes. and then there's harmony. And so I recognized in this moment here that something else was seeking to come through, but I had to be able to listen at a deeper level, even to demonstrate that in real time, because we're talking about ancestral communication. It happens in real time. So in our day-to-day conversations, when we are communicating and somebody is speaking to us and they are actually sharing with us something that is relevant and that is confirming what we are speaking, what we are experiencing in the moment, and we don't say anything, we create doubt in that person's mind, especially if they are not used to being affirmed. As a people, we're not used to being affirmed. Our individual experiences may be different, but as a people, we are not used to being affirmed. We are used to being ignored. We're used to have to fight for this and fight for that. That's not natural. You don't see nature, trees and plants fighting, literally fighting to grow. You don't see animals fighting to grow. They just grow. They just move according to their nature. But for us, it has been different. And so, in my communication with my friend, her affirming the things that I was saying in real time, she was like, "Oh my gosh, wow. Can you meet with me today? We got to continue this conversation." But the other side of that, see, we're talking about balance, divine balance. The other side of that was that she was, even as I was feeding her, she was feeding me. What I was offering her was feeding her, and what she was offering me was feeding me. That was literally, we call it feedback, right? Real time feedback. So when we become aware of the communication that is taking place within us, oftentimes we're seeing things, we know things that we have no evidence, no outer evidence of. And even the reason that we even have, the reason that we even think that way is because we live in a society where the people who are in charge don't have the level of insight that we have. And so they've had to disrupt our communication systems. Isn't that the first thing they seek to do in war? You seek to gather information, but then you want to disrupt the enemy's communication systems. You want to corrupt the communication that they receive so that when you move against them, it is a surprise. They don't know it. These are all tactics of warfare. We are in the midst of a war, and our main source of communication has been disrupted. So, how do we begin to reconnect in real time? I always say we purify ourselves first, but it doesn't mean that communication is not taking place even as we purify ourselves. It's how we it's how we protect ourselves. As I was touching this, I was reminded why I have this. So, when we are operating within the jurisdiction of Mother and Father God, it's like this is the area that we are operating in. Communication is flowing seamlessly. Communication between the earth and the elements in the earth and the elements in the atmosphere interact with the elements within the seed for the trees and the plants to grow seamlessly. They go through all different kinds of processes, but within this jurisdiction, they are able to grow effortlessly. Um, and that there is effort, but they're not fighting. They're not literally fighting to grow. It's a natural process. Now, when we begin to operate outside of this atmosphere, outside of this jurisdiction, and the example that's coming to me is from the Bible. This would be the Garden of Eden, and this would be when you kicked out the garden, right? This other place, you have to fight to survive. That was a metaphor, allegory. They took these stories from our people. They created a story that they took from our people. They corrupted it. And so they already corrupted our systems of communication with our great mother and great father God, and the system that they put in place in order for the universe and in order for the earth and the beings on the earth to operate. There has to be a smooth system of communication. It's not just, we think of it in simple terms as I talk to God and God answers me. That's as simple and basic as we speak about it, because we don't have our culture, so we don't know. We don't know the pathways that communication took, and we just call it God, or we may call it our intuition, or we may call it our spiritual team, but there's levels of knowledge that we have access to as people of Afro-Rakanu and Afro-Kaitnut African descent, regardless of where we come from on the planet, regardless of our ethnicity. There's systems of communications that we have access to, and we actually use every day, but it's really unconscious to us. And so that was happening in the conversation with my friend. I was saying something. As a matter of fact, I was talking about sound. We talk about light and sound, but even light, you see all the light behind me, light has a sound. Sound came first. There's a sound. And so people who are musicians, they're so highly attuned to sound. Singers, artists, they're so highly attuned to sound. And oftentimes, because they are that highly attuned, and that's meaning very sensitive, again, we're not operating within our natural framework, within our natural culture, where we have protocols that protect us from certain sounds, certain things, um, and keep us in a certain vibration, which the Garden of Eden, if you want to say this is the ancestral jurisdiction, the Garden of Eden would have a certain sound. Outside of that would have a sound that is dissonant. It doesn't resonate with you. When I said that, I think of like heavy metal music. It doesn't resonate. It's dissonant. But then there's other music that's harmonious and causes us to move in a flow and to think in a certain way. This is why they use music as a weapon of warfare against our children. And they understand how our melanin um, responds to sound. That sound is what kept us in lock and sync with Mother and Father God and the system that they created. But when we get locked into a dissonant sound, it creates havoc, it creates chaos within our lives and within our atmosphere. And so, as I was talking to her about that, that when we speak, we're literally reshaping the very atmosphere that is around us. They took our language for a reason. You could speak and stop some things. You could speak and communicate. A few words could cause you, the elders would use it during initiation, cause you to experience different levels of reality that we had to go through in order to know how to navigate through this world, through this realm and the realms in which we interact. I say realms in which we interact, so let me bring it back. When you dream, you're operating in a different realm. Your body is still. Anybody looking at you wouldn't see any movement. Your body is still, but you're experiencing yourself and your body elsewhere. And a lot of times, for some of you, the things that you see there are impacting things in real time here, but you're seeing it in another realm before it happens here, right? So sound travels through the dimensions. So people who are, that's just said, people, that's what I was saying. People who are musicians, who are very attuned to sound, sometimes they have a hard time navigating this life. Sometimes they have a hard time relating to people who don't understand the the sounds that they hear, the information. They don't always share the things they see or experience because people wouldn't always be able to relate, believe them, but or even take the time to have the conversation. But it's time that we as a people begin to acknowledge the experiences that we are having in real time. And when our people are speaking to us and they say something that resonates, speak, because that's a synchronicity. A synchronicity is a divine moment where the communication is recognized consciously. Thank you, on both ends. I never even thought about it like that. So even as I'm talking to you right now, the information is coming through in real time. Begin to acknowledge each other. And when someone says, one of our people say something to you that literally confirms an experience that you have been having. Acknowledge that, because your acknowledging that um, is going to help you to become more conscious of when you do that for other people. But it also, you recognizing yourself, you are also going to recognize that everything, the people around you, the environment around you is leaning in more to you and listening. It would seem as if the very environment is hearing, but you, just you being you, are literally bending and shaping reality as you move through the environment. If you were moving through water, you can see it in a pool. You move through water and you leave an impression in the water. If you spin really fast, the water begins to whirl around you. But it's the same thing with what we think of as nothing. No, this air, as I'm moving my hands, I'm leaving an impression in the environment. If there was a spider web there, the spider is so sensitive, you would see it begin to move away. I maybe touched the spider web a little bit and maybe I didn't, but the vibration is so sensitive to it, it will feel it and it will move. And so things move because we move. And so when we begin to acknowledge what is within us that is true, the experiences we often don't talk about, when someone else talks about it, begin to acknowledge that. And you will begin to see how you are becoming more and more aware of communication that was bypassing you before. This is how we protect ourselves, because when we're walking into dangerous situations, oftentimes we're so unaware of our surroundings that the information coming through is very slight. Just like when I stopped, I said, "Oh, I lost my train of thought." I didn't lose my train of thought. Another level of communication was coming through. And so even our words, because we're limited in our understanding of who we are, sometimes our words speak against the very things that we are trying to say. I had a premonition. I saw something before it happened. I always say, well, how could I see something before it happened? When I saw it, it was happening. Yes, it was happening. But if you didn't teach me that there are other realms that affect this one, then I don't understand that what I saw was happening in real time. It just hadn't reached this realm. Like the sound that the words from me, I'm speaking in real time. It seems like it's reaching you instantly, but there is a time, there is a process of it leaving me and reaching you, and that can be measured. And so we are literally beginning to learn how to harness our power. When you harness it, you're bringing it in, and then we learn how to control and to direct it. This is taking back agency, power over our minds, over our thrones, our first throne, because what we're thinking and feeling is expressing in real time in the environment around us. And so we are really not victims of the world that we see. We're just unaware of who we are and how we move through this world. So I'm being told that, okay, that's enough of that teaching. I actually gave a whole lot in there. So um, yeah, go back and listen to some of the things I talked about. For those of you who have an ear to hear, you will be able to hear and see much further beyond what I've shared. They don't want you to know the things that you know, have access to the information that you have. They don't want you to have access to the information that you have access to naturally. All medicine operates by disrupting our melanin flow, and you can't medicate the spirit. So for those of you suffering with anxiety, taking medication, you know how it makes you feel in your body, but you also know it doesn't stop your perception of the spirits that you may see or hear that torment you. Within our culture, there's a way that we begin to handle that. When we go to the altar, we are realigning with Mother, Father, God, and the system that they have created. And they do not operate in disorder. They repel disorder. The spirit forces repel disorder. It is how we are protected. It is literally what covers us, what protects us from what is happening out here. Ashe.